The arena was electric. The nation had been holding its collective breath for weeks, the anticipation building into a nearly unbearable tension. This debate was not just another televised exchange. It was a defining moment, a crucible in which the character of leadership itself would be tested. Millions of Americans tuned in, not merely out of curiosity, but out of a need to see who would embody the dignity, intelligence, and vision that the country so desperately craved. And there, under the relentless glare of studio lights, two forces prepared to collide. Donald Trump carried with him the weight of his reputation, an ego inflated by years of confrontational media appearances, a history of incendiary statements, and a strategy built on disruption and spectacle. He had thrived in moments of chaos, turning provocation into a weapon and drama into currency. His supporters cheered him as a fearless disruptor, while his critics warned that his impulsive nature and unchecked arrogance could erode the very foundations of national discourse. Every word he uttered carried potential to ignite outrage, dominate headlines, and fuel the cycle of political theater that had become his signature. Barack Obama, in contrast, represented a different kind of force, deliberate, composed, and grounded in principle. He had navigated the stormy waters of public service with a calm that inspired trust, a measured voice that demanded attention, and a reputation for turning complexity into clarity. Where Trump thrived on spectacle, Obama's power lay in subtlety, in timing, in the ability to make a single phrase resonate long after it was spoken. He was the embodiment of patience and strategy, a reminder that leadership was more than theatrics. It was vision, integrity, and an unwavering commitment to the people. The stakes were higher than a political score. This confrontation carried symbols. Weight, a reflection of the deeper battle over American identity, values, and dignity. It was a moment that demanded the nation confront questions it had long avoided. What did it truly mean to lead? How would the country define courage, composure, and responsibility in the face of arrogance? And beneath the surface of partisan lines, a more profound story was unfolding, one of leadership tested, of character measured under pressure, and of a nation yearning for validation and hope. Millions were watching, and no one expected the turn of events that was about to unfold. Every glance, every pause, every carefully chosen word was amplified by the screens that connected the living rooms of ordinary Americans to the stage where history was being made. The energy in the studio was palpable, a mixture of suspense, apprehension, and electric anticipation. Reporters leaned forward, viewers whispered to one another, social media feeds erupted with speculation, and the air seemed to vibrate with the collective heartbeat of a nation waiting for a spark. In this crucible, hero and villain were already defined, not by political affiliation, but by demeanor, by choices, and by the capacity to rise above chaos or be consumed by it. Trump's brashness promised fireworks, yet his volatility threatened to unravel his own carefully constructed persona. Obama's calm presence was both a shield and a weapon, a silent declaration that composure could strike harder than the loudest insult. Every frame of the debate was now a stage for the collision of these forces, and the audience could feel that what came next would reverberate far beyond the studio, shaping conversations, headlines, and imaginations for weeks to come. Donald Trump leaned forward, his signature smirk slicing across his face, eyes scanning the crowd with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. "Honestly," he began, voice said, sharp, dripping with condescension, "some people say I'm the only one who can fix this country. Because let's face it, everyone else is just talking, and getting nothing done." Donald Trump's journey to the debate stage had been anything but ordinary. Born into wealth, he was thrust into a world where confidence and bravado were as valuable as skill, and where public perception often outweighed actual competence. From his earliest ventures in real estate to his meteoric rise as a media personality, Trump had honed an image that was larger than life, one of flamboyance, audacity, and relentless self-promotion. He learned quickly that in the world of spectacle, arrogance could be a tool, and overconfidence a strategy. Every handshake, every smirk, every emphatic gesture was calibrated to project dominance, even if the substance behind it was inconsistent. By the time he entered politics, Trump's reputation was already forged in fire. Reality television had made him a household name, a man whose persona was inseparable from controversy. He thrived on provocation, using inflammatory statements to dominate headlines and ignite fervor among supporters. Critics decried him as divisive and reckless, pointing to a long trail of contradictions. Promises that shifted with convenience, policies that often seemed more instinct than strategy, and a public image carefully curated yet wildly unpredictable. The world had come to expect unpredictability from Trump. His rallies were arenas of chaos, his speeches punctuated by improvisation and spectacle. In the lead-up to the debate, every appearance, every tweet, and every public statement was analyzed and dissected. Some saw brilliance in his unapologetic bluntness. Others saw recklessness that endangered more than just political norms. His persona was a paradox, simultaneously commanding attention and inspiring criticism, adored and feared, a man who thrived on confrontation, while leaving allies and opponents alike uncertain of what would come next. On stage, these traits became amplified. Cameras capture every twitch, every hand gesture, every confident posture, as if the lens itself was complicit in magnifying his larger-than-life personality. A smirk here, a raised eyebrow there, a dismissive wave of the hand, each movement a carefully unconsciously choreographed declaration of superiority. Yet, beneath the bravado lay an impulsive streak, a tendency to escalate conflict without caution, and a reliance on theatrics over reason. He had built a career on spectacle, but spectacle alone could not withstand the scrutiny of intellect, preparation, and composure that Obama embodied. Trump's public record was punctuated by moments of audacity that had shocked the nation, from controversial policy statements to personal attacks against rivals and media figures. These moments had cemented him as a figure who polarized audiences. Some revered him for his defiance of convention, while others recoiled at the sheer disregard for decorum. His rise was fueled by an ability to dominate attention, to bend conversations around his persona, and to command loyalty through spectacle rather than consensus. Yet this same approach sowed the seeds of vulnerability. In debates, where poise and strategy mattered as much as rhetoric, impulsivity could turn applause into backlash, smirks into moments of exposure, and confidence into arrogance that alienated even his own base. And so, as Trump took his place behind the podium, the audience could feel the weight of his presence. Every movement was a statement, every glance a challenge, every line a test of the nation's patience and tolerance. He was the embodiment of audacity, a living paradox of charisma and controversy. Yet, in the shadows of that bravado, the subtle cracks in his armor hinted at what could come. A misstep, a miscalculation, a moment when the very qualities that had propelled him to prominence might catalyze his undoing. Barack Obama's story was not one of inherited wealth or inherited privilege, but of perseverance, intellect, and an unyielding belief in the power of service. Born to a Kenyan father and an American mother, his early years were defined by a patchwork of cultures, experiences, and challenges that would ultimately shape his worldview. From the bustling streets of Honolulu to the neighborhoods of Jakarta, young Obama learned early that identity was layered, fluid, and often tested by circumstance. He understood what it meant to be an outsider looking in, to navigate worlds where acceptance was earned, not given. These formative experiences instilled in him a profound empathy, a capacity to see beyond the surface, and a determination to act with integrity regardless of the obstacles. Education became both refuge and crucible. At Columbia University and later Harvard Law School, he distinguished himself not only through academic brilliance, but also through his ability to listen, synthesize, and engage thoughtfully with opposing perspectives. These were not just intellectual exercises, they were rehearsals for leadership, exercises in patience, negotiation, and the delicate art of persuasion. He learned to weigh every word, to measure every reaction, and to recognize that real influence lay not in volume or spectacle, but in reasoned argument and moral clarity. Obama's early career as a community organizer in Chicago further honed his understanding of America's struggles. He walked streets most politicians only saw from campaign trails, knocked on doors where hope had been frayed by systemic neglect, and listened to stories of ordinary people fighting to secure dignity, safety, and opportunity for themselves and their families. It was here, among the people whose voices were too often ignored, that he developed the calm, strategic persona that would define him as a statesman. And leadership, he realized, was less about dominance and more about connection, less about theatrics and more about substance. Every conversation, every meeting, every initiative was a lesson in patience, empathy, and the quiet power of deliberate action. When Obama entered the political arena, he carried with him these lessons, blending intellect with authenticity. His speeches were carefully crafted, yet never felt artificial. His rhetoric carried a cadence that resonated not because it was loud, but because it reflected truth. Across the nation, people of diverse backgrounds recognized in him a reflection of their own hopes, a leader who could articulate shared struggles and shared aspirations. He became a symbol of possibility, not just for what he achieved, but for what he represented: dignity, reason, and the capacity to lead with both head and heart. Through the Senate and eventually the presidency, Obama faced opposition and attacks that tested his resolve. Yet, time and again, he demonstrated an extraordinary ability to remain composed, to respond not with reactionary anger, but with deliberate strategy. In moments when others would escalate, he listened. When others would snap, he paused. When others sought spectacle, he pursued substance. It was a mastery of restraint that made his victories not only political but moral, leaving a lasting impression on colleagues, adversaries, and the public alike. By the time the debate stage awaited him, Obama had faced challenges that demanded more than charisma. They demanded intellect, patience, and a deep understanding of people. Every pause in his speech, every measured smile, every carefully chosen phrase was the product of years of preparation and experience. The audience may have seen only the polished, confident statesman before them, but behind the calm exterior lay decades of struggle, reflection, and deliberate cultivation of a persona capable of navigating the most volatile arenas. It was this combination of intelligence, empathy, and strategic mastery that uniquely prepared him for the moment he now faced. Whereas his opponent relied on brashness and theatrics, Obama brought the quiet power of reason, the subtle force of dignity, and the moral weight of lived experience. Every element of his life had converged to this very stage, to this very confrontation, where calm would meet chaos, and foresight would meet impulsivity. The crowd might not have realized it yet, but what they were about to witness was not merely a verbal exchange. It was a demonstration of the principles that had guided him throughout his life. The heroism was not in spectacle, but in composure. The triumph was not in volume, but in clarity. And in the stillness of the stage, as the lights blazed and cameras tracked every movement, Obama's presence radiated a quiet, almost unshakable authority that had been earned, not claimed. As the debate began, the tension between ego and reason, arrogance and dignity, reached its boiling point. The stage crackled with tension the moment the moderators asked the first question. Trump wasted no time, leaning into his familiar rhythm of bombast and interruption, his voice slicing through the charged silence like a blade. "Let's be honest," he declared, smirking at the cameras. "The economy under your administration, Obama, was a disaster. Everyone knows it, everyone felt it, and frankly, I'm the only one who could fix it. Fast, better, smarter." A ripple ran through the audience. Gasps, murmurs, and the faint shuffle of feet underscored the palpable unease. Yet across the stage, Obama's expression remained calm, almost serene. He allowed the words to land fully, neither flinching nor raising his voice, letting the weight of measured silence amplify their absurdity. Every twitch of Trump's hand, every exaggerated gesture, every sharp intonat, seemed to feed into an unspoken rhythm. Chaos versus control, brashness versus dignity. Trump sensed a crowd reaction that bordered on skepticism, and he pounced. "People are tired of speeches, Obama. They want results. You talk a good game, but let's face it, talking doesn't cut it anymore." He gestured wildly, leaning toward the cameras, as if to physically shove his argument into the homes of viewers across America. Each word carried the friction of arrogance, each glance the threat of provocation. His supporters cheered, rallying behind his audacity, while critics winced at the blatant disregard for composure. Obama finally responded, voice steady and deliberate, punctuated by moments of thoughtful pause. "Results are meaningful, yes," he said, letting his words roll slowly. "But not when they come at the expense of integrity, fairness, or the dignity of the people we serve. Leadership is not measured in flashy headlines or temporary applause. It is measured in the lives we touch, the trust we earn, and the consistency with which we act on our principles." The audience leaned in, some murmuring in agreement, some exchanging astonished glances at the contrast unfolding on stage. The cameras cut to close-ups. Trump's smirk faltered ever so slightly, his eyes narrowing as the realization set in that his usual tactics were being met not with panic, but with poise. Meanwhile, Obama's calm gaze held the room, commanding attention without the need for theatrics. The contrast was stark, almost cinematic, as if the very essence of leadership and ego had been distilled into two opposing figures under the glare of studio lights. Trump, unwilling to yield, escalated further. His voice rose, laced with condescension and sharpened barbs. "You know, some people still think you're smart. I don't see it. I see weakness. I see hesitation. People want strength. They want someone who acts, not someone who talks in circles." His words punctuated the air like verbal jabs, each one intended to provoke a visible reaction. The room seemed to hold its collective breath as Obama leaned slightly forward, eyes fixed on Trump with a calm intensity that contrasted sharply with the brash energy radiating from his opponent. Every movement was deliberate, every gesture calculated. The silence that enveloped the debate stage was almost tangible, as if the air itself had thickened in anticipation of what was about to come. Millions of viewers at home felt the tension spike, knowing instinctively that something extraordinary was unfolding. Then, slowly, Obama began to speak. "You talk about results," he said, each word measured, resonant, deliberate. "But results mean nothing if they come without integrity. Power without accountability is not leadership. It is chaos disguised as confidence." His gaze never wavered, and yet in those few seconds a subtle shift occurred. The smirk on Trump's face faltered. A twitch, almost imperceptible, betrayed a momentary doubt, a crack in the armor of arrogance that had long defined him. The audience reacted immediately. Gasps rippled through the auditorium. Some leaned forward, captivated by the precision and authority of the words. Others whispered among themselves, unable to tear their eyes from the stage. The cameras cut to close-ups, capturing the imperceptible tremor in Trump's jaw, the narrowing of his eyes, the faint flicker of uncertainty. Commentators, speaking live, could hardly conceal their astonishment. "Did you see that?" one stammered. Obama didn't just respond. He dismantled him without raising his voice. Obama allowed a brief pause, the silence extending just long enough to let the weight of his words settle. Then he continued, building the cadence slowly, like a masterful conductor leading an orchestra to a crescendo. Leadership is not about domination. It is not about who shouts the loudest, who interrupts the most, or who commands attention. On through spectacle alone. It is about the lives you touch, the trust you cultivate, and the example you set for the next generation. Each phrase struck with surgical precision, leaving no room for evasion, no corner for theatrics to hide. Trump's attempts to interrupt were met with a controlled glance, subtle yet unmistakable, a silent assertion that this time the narrative would not bend to chaos. The audience sensed the dynamic shift. Where moments before Trump had dominated the room with force, now Obama's composure dominated with presence. The power had quietly, irrevocably shifted. Social media feeds were lighting up in real time. Hashtags of admiration, disbelief, and viral clips exploding simultaneously. Millions of Americans shared clips, screenshots, and comments, marveling at the calm, devastating efficiency of the response. Then came the line that would be replayed endlessly across news networks, talk shows, and social platforms. Obama's voice carried both firmness and quiet authority. You see, it's not enough to claim you are strong. True strength is measured not by ego, but by the courage to listen, the patience to act wisely, and the humility to learn from mistakes. Another pause. The auditorium was completely still, every eye riveted, every heartbeat synchronized to the cadence of his words. Even seasoned political analysts accustomed to decades of debates and confrontations leaned forward, awestruck by the performance unfolding before them. Trump, for the first time visibly rattled, opened his mouth to respond, but the words faltered. The smirk was gone, replaced by a flicker of confusion and irritation. Every gesture that had once radiated control now seemed defensive, reactive, unstable. Obama's eyes, calm and unwavering, seemed to penetrate beyond the bluster and bravado, exposing the fragility beneath. The audience felt it intuitively. The balance had shifted, the moment had turned, and the outcome was becoming impossible to ignore. Obama pressed on, each sentence a careful strike designed not to humiliate openly, but to reveal truth so plainly that it could not be denied. It is easy to shout over people, to claim victories in sound bites and applause lines, he continued. But the real measure of a leader is not in how loud he can be, it is in how deeply he can serve, how he can lift others, not himself, how he can inspire a nation, not just command attention. By now, murmurs of approval had spread through the crowd. Cameras captured the subtle nods, the quiet expressions of awe. Every syllable built upon the last, creating a cumulative effect that was unstoppable in its precision and impact. Even Trump's supporters, those who had cheered his every word, were momentarily caught off guard. The words cut through the spectacle, revealing a stark contrast between impulsive bravado and deliberate wisdom. Commentators struggled to describe the scene in real time. He didn't just answer, he owned the stage, one remarked, voice almost trembling. This isn't a debate anymore. This is a masterclass in leadership and composure. Obama delivered the final line with impeccable timing, the kind of cadence that left no room for reply. Leadership is not a performance. It is a responsibility, and those who forget that will always be exposed by those who remember. Silence hung for a heartbeat. Then the audience erupted. Applause, murmurs, cheers, and gasps interweaving into a living, breathing testament to the power of calm intellect over chaos. Cameras panned across stunned faces, capturing the unspoken acknowledgement that something historic had just occurred. Social media exploded in parallel, millions of shares, trending topics, and hashtags declaring the moment unforgettable. In that instant, the debate ceased to be merely a political exchange. It became a cinematic tableau of contrast. arrogance confronted by dignity, impulsivity challenged by strategy, spectacle met with substance. The hero had risen not by overpowering with noise, but by commanding with presence, reasoning, and moral clarity. Each beat of the counterattack had been executed with the precision of a seasoned strategist, leaving an indelible mark on both the audience and the narrative of the night. And as the applause and murmurs echoed through the studio and across the nation, it was clear that this moment would be replayed, analyzed, and remembered for years to come. Barack Obama had not just answered his opponent. He had redefined the measure of leadership for an entire country. The moment didn't just end on stage. Its shockwaves rippled across America and beyond. The moment Obama's words hit, the world erupted. Screens across living rooms, bars, offices, and coffee shops lit up with notifications, likes, retweets, and shares. Social media became a roaring flood, a virtual echo chamber magnifying the astonishment that had gripped the live audience. Memes surfaced almost instantly. Obama's calm, measured gaze juxtaposed against Trump's faltering smirk, captions dripping with irony, admiration, and a sense of collective relief. Hashtags like #MicDropObama, #LeadershipDefined, and Moment of Dignity surged into trending topics, dominating conversations nationwide and beyond. News anchors struggled to keep quiet pace. Celebrities and public figures joined the chorus. Tweets from actors, musicians, and influencers praising Obama's composure and eloquence flooded timelines. Some offered witty quips, highlighting Trump's stumbling attempts to interrupt. Others shared video clips with captions like, "Class over chaos, always." Even foreign observers tuned in, live streaming commentary from London, Berlin, and Tokyo, marveling at the contrast between the two figures. The ripple effect was immediate. International news outlets dissected every word, pundits debated strategy, and commentators tried to contextualize what had just unfolded. At home, viewers were glued to their screens, watching the aftermath with bated breath. Families, friends, and co-workers exchanged instant reactions. Gasps were audible, laughter mingled with astonishment, and some found themselves tearing up at the sheer audacity of calm, reasoned discourse amidst a storm of insults and ego. Screens captured each reaction, creating a montage of disbelief, admiration, and validation that only heightened the emotional resonance. Social media feeds became an extension of the audience itself, a living, breathing entity amplifying every nuance of the exchange. Trump's image, once a symbol of raw confidence and bluster, faced scrutiny in real time. Clips highlighting his faltering responses went viral, news headlines dissected each moment, and late-night hosts had material for weeks. Opinion polls shifted in subtle but measurable ways, reflecting a new perception among viewers who had witnessed not just a debate, but a masterclass in leadership, patience, and moral authority. Political commentators debated whether this moment would define the remainder of the election cycle, noting that a single exchange could recalibrate public expectations of what true leadership looked like. Even memes carried weight. Each shared image, trending hashtag, became a cultural artifact, capturing the emotional and ideological shockwaves that the debate had unleashed. People used humor to process astonishment, while others used the clips to reflect on civic responsibility, empathy, and the type of leadership they desired for their communities. Across platforms, the moment became a touchstone, a rallying point for those seeking validation for values of composure, intelligence, and dignity in the face of brashness and impulsivity. The cumulative effect was cinematic, almost surreal. As the night unfolded, the nation seemed to hold its breath collectively, watching the dominoes of influence topple in real time. Commentators predicted the viral clips would dominate not just social media, but classrooms, workplaces, and dinner conversations for weeks. Editors curated highlight reels that would replay endlessly. each cut reinforcing the stark contrast between Obama's measured brilliance and Trump's reactive impulsivity. Every camera angle, every reaction shot, every social media notification became part of a larger narrative. A visual and emotional testament to what happened when intellect met ego head-on. By the morning, the debate had become more than just a televised event. It was a cultural moment, a national conversation, a symbol of the power of dignity over disruption. The shockwaves radiated far beyond politics, inspiring discussions about character, leadership, and the courage to act thoughtfully in high-pressure situations. Viewers felt validated, their emotions amplified by the collective recognition that they had witnessed something extraordinary. The conversation had been irrevocably altered. And yet, amid the chaos, one lesson stood out. A truth about leadership, dignity, and resilience. As America absorbed the unforgettable spectacle, it became clear that the night was more than a televised debate. It was a vivid demonstration of timeless principles in action. Beyond the flashing lights, camera angles, and viral moments lay a lesson in human character. Dignity, composure, and integrity consistently triumph over arrogance, impulsivity, and showmanship. In a world often captivated by noise and spectacle, the exchange reminded viewers that true influence stems not from loud proclamations or brash attacks, but from measured words, empathy, and an unwavering sense of purpose. Obama's calm response was a testament to decades of disciplined leadership. Every pause, every carefully chosen word, revealed a leader who understood that words carry weight and that the way one handles pressure reflects not only personal character, but the expectations of those they serve. Millions watching recognized a simple yet profound truth. Intellect and emotional intelligence can disarm ego and redefine the narrative. Where impulsivity leads to chaos, deliberate thought leads to lasting impact. This moment became a mirror for viewers, inviting reflection on their own lives. How often do we allow pride, anger, or impatience to dictate our decisions? How often do we let superficial victories obscure the greater value of integrity? By witnessing composure in action, audiences were reminded that leadership is not measured by who can speak the loudest or dominate the conversation. It is measured by the ability to act with reason, empathy, and courage when stakes are highest. It also illuminated the power of public service as a guiding principle. Obama's persona, forged through years of navigating challenges with grace, underscored a fundamental idea. Leadership is a responsibility, not a platform for self-aggrandizement. The contrast with his opponent was stark, reinforcing the lesson that arrogance may dominate headlines for a moment. But lasting respect and influence emerge from self-discipline, thoughtfulness, and commitment to the greater good. For Americans, and for people worldwide, the exchange became more than a political event. It was an inspiration. It encouraged viewers to internalize these principles, to hold themselves and their leaders to higher standards, and to recognize that dignity and intelligence are more contagious than anger or impulsivity. By remaining grounded, even in the most heated of confrontations, we not only elevate ourselves, but also set an example that shapes communities, workplaces, and nations. Ultimately, the night served as a vivid reminder that victories are most profound when they are achieved without compromising values. The applause, the viral clips, and the shocked reactions were more than entertainment. They were a call to aspire toward patience, strategic thinking, and measured action in every sphere of life. In observing this clash of temperament and vision, audiences were not just entertained, they were educated, inspired, and invited to reflect on how they could bring these lessons into their own daily challenges. As America absorbed this unforgettable moment, the question remained: how would we carry these lessons forward in our own lives? Could we approach conflicts with calm reasoning rather than reactive anger? Could we elevate dialogue over disruption, service over spectacle, and wisdom over ego? These were the questions lingering in living rooms, classrooms, and offices nationwide, a testament to the enduring impact of what had unfolded on that stage. The debate, once merely an event on television, had transformed into a cultural touchstone, a moment where dignity and intellect outshone arrogance and impulsivity. Obama's measured words reminded America that true leadership is defined not by dominance, but by composure, clarity, and moral courage. His calm triumph over chaos left a lasting impression, a blueprint for how we can face challenges in our own lives with courage and dignity.